Well, good afternoon. This is Wellness Wednesday, and here we are again on the Reset program, Health, Wellness, and Wise with Linda Dorman. I'm your host, and I welcome you to the program with open arms and hope that you're doing well in the DMV and beyond. I'm excited that today we have some great guests. As a matter of fact, we have one guest who is in a very secret place. So you're not going to be able to see her today, but you're going to be able to hear from her, and you're going to want to get all of your pens and papers and notebooks and take copious notes. But our other guest, you can see, welcome to the program, both Lori Russell. Lori, raise your hand and just wave to everyone. Okay, that's Lori. And on the line is Terry Peters. Terry, shout out and say hello.
Hello, everybody.
Wonderful. And actually, Terry has been a guest on our program before, and we're so happy that she's coming back. And guess what she's doing? She's coming back with her sister. Lori is actually her sister in real life and in the healthcare space, in different ways in the healthcare space. So today's topic and program is on all things autoimmune disease. But before that, let me just make sure that you know who and what and how the guests are working diligently in the health, wellness, and lifestyle space. So Lori Russell is the CEO of Younger Hair Salon. Lori is a health hair specialist. I want to call it that way. And if that's not the official title, you just gotta just hop in and correct me. That works with patients who are suffering from alopecia, and she performs non-surgical treatments for alopecia, which is, as we know, hair loss. But we're going to go a little bit deeper into the what and the how and the why in the treatment. And then Terry Peters is an amazing CEO as well of her own company, Quality Life Pharmacy and Health Incorporated, here in Capitol Heights, Maryland, right outside the District of Columbia. And she's also supervising pharmacist at one of our local hospitals under the University of Maryland Medical System. So ladies, you are a 2-1 punch today. We're going to talk about autoimmune disease, and hopefully we will get some nuggets of information that our audience, both listening in and tuning in through our OurTV.network on Roku, Apple TV, Fire Stick, and www.ourtv.network will enjoy, learn, use, and be inspired to share. So let's just start with you, Lori, because we can see you. Welcome.
Okay.
So
it's great to be here.
It's great to be here. We appreciate that. And let's talk about what is actually alopecia. And then, Terry will hop in, of course, but talk to us from what you see in your clientele.
Okay. Well, alopecia is kind of like an umbrella term for extreme hair loss. And I say extreme because on a daily basis, we shed 40 to 100 hairs daily, because each hair has its own life cycle, and there's 3 stages of the life cycles. So 40 to 100 hairs daily. I see a lot of people who start worrying when they see some hair loss, and I kind of explain to them the whole life cycle of hair, and then they better understand and calm their stress and their nerves over losing their hair. But there's various forms of alopecia. You have Alopecia Areata, Totalis, Universalis. Areata pretty much is it's when you lose patches of hair. I've seen clients come in and all of a sudden you see this round circle patch of hair missing. A lot of times the cause of that is stress, anxiety. Any stress that causes anything that can cause anything that lowers the immune system. So anything that lowers the immune system, something as simple as allergy season. Allergy season, your body has to do a lot of fighting. So, hair loss can be from so many different reasons. There's scarring alopecia, which comes from, it could be chemical burns. It can be an underlying condition. It can be from cancer treatment. You can have scarring alopecia. Then you have traction alopecia. That's from constant pulling and tugging of the hair. Those tight ponytails, or the hair, when you have the weaves or the braids real tight around the hairline. So those kind of things can cause, traction alopecia. And then you have diffused And what that means is suddenly you'll see, you can hold your hair up and you'll see it's not as dense as it used to be. And, there's different things that can cause the shrinking of the hair follicle itself. So,
well, wow, that's a lot of different reasons for alopecia to occur in the body. And, we think about it kind of often with men who start to go bald.
right.
And, now the real hip trend, and I love it, are men who are in fact going all the way bald to avoid kind of the halo effect or the U effect, where they have hair just in kind of the back. Is that something that is caused by aging or genetics or just gender, something along those lines? We talk a lot about women and hair loss because it's really devastating, but I'm sure it's as devastating in men.
Oh, absolutely. There are that, segment of the population of men who say, you know what, I'll just go ahead and shave it off and go bald. And they rock the bald look.
Yeah.
And then you do have that segment that's, it causes them stress, anxiety. They're really attached to their hair.
Mm-hmm.
And the same for women. So that baldness, that U shape is not only, they call it male pattern baldness, but you can also see it in women, believe it or not. I have had clients that are completely smooth on the top.
Oh.
And a lot of times that can be caused from DHT, which is dihydrotestosterone. And what that causes, it's our body produces it regularly, and it converts to DHT, and that attacks the hair follicle.
Interesting. So, and that's not necessarily specific to one gender or another.
No.
So that crossing, what do we see? Is that even a condition that we could see in children, young people, teenagers who now are putting all this gel and, we just all this chemical in their hair, even though we have a movement to go natural, meaning no chemical in your hair, just enjoy your natural hair state. But are we also seeing this in young people? And if so, how do you address that?
Well, not necessarily the DHT, but there are other reasons. I had, and this was years before I even became certified in hair loss, I worked with an 8-year-old. She started off with a patch, and then over a period of time, she went completely to the Alopecia universalis, which is losing hair over her entire body. So her immune system was fighting, and it just continued on. I mean, she lost her lashes, her brows, every area that she would have hair, she lost it.
My goodness. And so, and it's a warning, I guess, to some, and I that was based on maybe genetics or some other health condition as it relates to her autoimmune state.
Yes. And, and I see it in teenagers, and because everyone is wearing extensions,
yes,
braids. The big thing now is the braids all the way to the ground.
Right.
So you imagine that constant weight and pull on the hair follicle, which will in turn cause traction alopecia.
And so
the hairline go away.
The hair, so it just pulls the hair down. It's weighing, so it's pulling the follicle.
Constant stress on the follicle.
Constant stress. So then, what about as you get older, women who are in their menopause years or perimenopause with the hormonal changes and the imbalances? I've even understood that pregnancy can actually create a state of alopecia, or maybe that's temporary, or is this permanent? What can we expect if we're in those conditions?
It definitely can. And I have seen it. I have had several clients who, while they were pregnant, their hair just grew and it was just full and flowing. Mm-hmm. And then after they deliver, within 2 to 3 months or so, one of them, her entire front perimeter was gone, completely smooth. It was shocking for her. It was depressing for her. Mm-hmm. It eventually came back though. But, you think about when you're pregnant, you have all these extra hormones that your body produces. And so then once you give birth, your body goes through this hormone drop, and so that's like a shock to your system. Terry could probably talk more about that, the internal effects of it.
Yes, Terry, do you have some commentary? Because for our listeners and viewers who experience just this beautiful head of hair, which is so symbolic of a lot of times our self-confidence and even our self-worth, and we spend billions of dollars in the health and beauty counters buying all kind of products to create that luscious, beautiful, healthy looking hair, which symbolizes something important in our lives. And then you come up pregnant, which is a wonderful time, and your hair is growing, or you're transitioning into your later years and you lose your hair. What is happening in our bodies that we can counteract or we can support to maintain at least the basic healthy hair?
Lori touched on it a little bit when she talked about the dihydrotestosterone. Mm-hmm. That's a precursor in the pathway of making testosterone, starting with cholesterol. And then it goes into different pathways. For women, we tend to have more estrogen and progesterone and a little less testosterone when we're young. Mm-hmm. And as we age and go through the menopausal phase, we actually start to convert more of the estrogen into testosterone, believe it or not, unless we get tested. And that's what we do at our location is we test saliva for your hormones. And we're able to look at what's going on in your tissue. And what we're finding is that there are a lot more women who have elevated DHT or dihydrotestosterone levels. Estrogen and testosterone are in the same pathway. So as your ovaries and your adrenal glands stop producing that hormone, you start seeing more testosterone because your body's always trying to find its balance. And so when you are now hormonally out of balance, like she said, stress, nutrition, so many factors that play a role in keeping you in balance, starting with your hypothalamus, your pituitary, your adrenal glands, and all of those are tied in together to release those hormones. So at a certain point, you don't release those hormones, or chronic stress and sickness will also dramatically impact your hormonal levels as well. And over time, we deplete our stores. And when they get depleted, that's when you'll see the manifestation of what I call dis-ease, such as hair loss, such as weight gain, such as kidney problems, blood pressure. All these dis-eases, they call them autoimmune because they really don't know what the real source is. But I have some news for you. There are a lot of the triggers that kick in have a lot to do with what we're eating. We're finding more and more people, because of the genetically modified foods we're eating. The food pyramid completely shifted in the 70s and 80s, where they used to tell you to eat a lot of breads and cereals because they were trying to promote that industry. Well, along with that came diabetes, hypertension, and kidney failure. So this high carbohydrate diet has pushed us right into diabetes. Now you look at the food pyramid and it has less meat, less carbs, and more vegetables now. It's completely converted, but look how many people are sick with another pandemic called diabetes now. So all of this is tied in. Diabetes affects your blood flow. Pre-diabetes affects your blood flow. Poor blood flow leads to hair loss. If you don't have enough circulation going to the scalp, because the arteries and are clogged up with sugar molecules, you'll have poor blood flow. And that's why you see so many men with erectile dysfunction and women with their issues. It's all tied in together. I mean, that's a whole other program that we can talk about, but that's all of it's linked together. And even with the children who end up, they call type 1 diabetes, they call that an autoimmune disorder. Well, I have news for you. It's linked to cow's milk.
Oh,
there's
wow.
There's an antigen called bovine serum antigen that is found in cow's milk. And if a child is predisposed to sensitivity, that antigen looks just like the beta cells in the pancreas and can lead to type 1 diabetes in children. So, but the milk industry, they don't want to talk about that because nobody will buy milk. So if you think about it, let's just think about this logically. A calf weighs between 50 and 100 pounds at birth, right?
Yes. And
that mother's milk from his cow mother makes him a 500-pound cow. Now, you're feeding that to your children. And what are we dealing with? Childhood obesity, type 1 diabetes, children with hypertension, And like Lori described, this child that suddenly had alopecia. For your audience, I would recommend, if you eat a piece of food and it does not make you feel good and you feel sick, constipated, and bloated, you're having an immune response to it. It doesn't manifest necessarily as itching or rashes. It irritates and inflames. And inflamed blood vessels create issues like cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, strokes. The comedian that just passed away,
Bob Saget.
He had COVID. Remember, in our previous presentations, we talked about how COVID up front attacks the lungs. After it's finished attacking your lungs, it attacks the heart. I would not be surprised if he was a long hauler. I would not be surprised at all. If upon autopsy they found that he had an enlarged heart, I would not be surprised.
So,
and that's what.
No, go ahead, Terry. Finish your thought, because this is.
So one of the things that people who are starting to not take COVID seriously and think, oh, it's like the flu. No, it's not. It is a parasite. It is a virus. It is mutating because we are allowing ourselves to become vectors so that it can learn and master our DNA, our RNA, so it can become stronger. In France, I just found out there are 46 variants now.
Right. Yes.
So it's becoming stronger. It wants to survive. All the horror movies that we've seen, think of them like the viruses. They attach themselves to you. They take over your body functions and destroy and annihilate you. And that's why I focus more on prevention. We have been taught in our system to not be focused on prevention. Functional medicine focuses on prevention. Holistic medicine focuses on prevention. But the standard the standard of care is to diagnose and treat. Well, that's after the fact. What you want to start focus on, people, is how do I prevent getting this disease? First thing, keep your mask on. Just because you have shots doesn't mean you're invincible. Doesn't mean you can't catch COVID again. You have to keep your nose and mouth covered. You didn't even hardly hear of any cases of influenza. You didn't hardly hear of any cases of even the common cold last year because everybody was too afraid to take their masks off. They got comfortable, and now in some places, people are getting what's called, what do they call it? They call
it's the combination. Yeah, it's the combination.
It's the combination, because these viruses are now borrowing from other viruses to make themselves stronger. They're parasites. They want to survive just like we do.
So then, Lori and Terry, how do we reconcile that against the fact that we do have COVID? We do have these super variants that, as you just said, it wants to survive. It's mutating, it's learning, it's growing, it's becoming smarter, and therefore it's being transmitted more widely and more contagious against someone who is dealing with an autoimmune disease. First of all, I know there are multiple types of autoimmune diseases, and then we've got this comorbidity or symptom of the potential of getting COVID, which now complicates even more, compounds and complicates being able to treat these various autoimmune diseases. That's what's really concerning to me. And that's why I'm hoping our audience is taking copious notes and deciding to do their own research, because it's a real vicious cycle in our health. And we're not talking about all the other things that play into it, cancers and mental health disorders and all kind of other organ failure or organ disease health issues, but specifically to autoimmune disease because it's so misunderstood. So that's the question that I have. How do we, as JQ public, the listener and the viewer, get our arms around all of this? What are some of the top things to know? You mentioned something about thinking about getting a saliva test to understand where your hormone panel, where you're stabilized. That's one. I know that things like, particularly for a lot of different issues, improving your blood circulation, the circulation of oxygen in your body. And we know what COVID does to oxygen in the body. What else can we think in terms of, I have an autoimmune disease, I have a lupus, I have alopecia, I have rheumatoid arthritis, and let's start naming some of them, putting names on what these types are. And
the first thing that people need to do is learn to change your attitude towards food.
Yes.
We have learned to live to eat and not eat to live. We overeat food. We eat too much. Sugar makes you fat, clogs your arteries, makes you make more cholesterol, and not the good cholesterol. It raises triglycerides. It raises HDL. The reason why Big Pharma is doing so well is because it's counting on us to not do the right thing. When you don't make the lifestyle changes, they come with a new drug to treat for what you're not doing for yourself. We have to learn how to eat to live. We have to learn how to cherish and protect our bodies. We have to learn how to stay away from the foods that make you uncomfortable. And if you want to know what's causing your symptoms, there is what's called an all category or all cat allergy testing, where they test every category to find out what you're sensitive to. At least if you know what you're sensitive to, you know what to avoid. And instead of walking in fear and ignorance, you'll at least know, if I'm allergic to eggs, why would I continue to eat eggs if I know that I could end up with cancer because I keep inflaming my digestive tract?
Okay, well, hold on. Let's do a timeout just on what you have said, because we want to make sure that you're saying that sensitivity. So you're saying get tested for food sensitivities that create an unhealthy environment in your body, like inflammation and potentially a gateway to cancers and other. Okay. All right. Continue on, because that's an important note, is getting yourself tested to see what food allergies, because when we think of allergies, we think of pollen and we think of dust and we start sneezing and wheezing and coughing. We don't think of, I love the taste. I love what it looks like. I love the smell, but actually I don't like how that food responded in my body, but I'm continuing to eat it because I don't even realize that means I am sensitive or even fully allergic to that food because I've eaten it since a child.
Well, let me interject. I'm a good example. I did get tested through Terry and found out that I'm highly sensitive to gluten and wheat. And for years, I had been to the doctors they did every kind of test imaginable, MRI, CAT scan, all kinds of tests to find out why my stomach was bothering me all the time. And once I found that out, I cut gluten out of my diet. Now, there are times where I may eat out and get cross-contamination, and I know immediately what happened. My hairline thinned, the crown of my hair thinned. That was from hormones, thyroid, and gluten sensitivity, all of that. So now, since I have found that out, I've made those changes and my hairline has filled in, the crown has filled in. So, I'm a great example of what she was just talking about.
I think that's so important. And we have someone from our Facebook audience, Janice Hawkins, asked, how about heredity? I mean, is there any way that we can think about these autoimmune diseases from that perspective? And I don't want to lose the conversation and trend of thought related to nutrition, because we want to continue that and the testing. We have about 1 minute left in the first segment of the half of the program. Can you talk a little bit about hereditary issues?
Yeah, some things are blamed on heredity, but some of them is all family lifestyle choices. Unless you can get genetically tested and have a gene, and for a fact that gene that's associated with that condition is in everybody. A lot of times, some things that we blame on heredity are eating habits or lifestyle choices that are passed down from generation to generation. You have a whole family of people that have heart attacks and cardiovascular disease and bad bones, but all of them ate the same type of bad foods for years. My father is the oldest of 10, and I remember how we ate at Grandma's house. It was like Thanksgiving every day.
It was Thanksgiving every day. Okay, well, let's talk about Thanksgiving. Let's talk about nutrition, health, and wellness. When we come back from the break, we're going to take a quick station break and come back to the Reset program with Lori Russell and Terry Peters talking about autoimmune diseases and everything else associated with it on the Reset Health, Wellness, and Lifestyle. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, and welcome to the Reset program, Health, Wellness, and Lifestyle. I'm your host, Linda Dorman, and we are in the second half of our program. I hope you didn't miss the first half because it was jam-packed with a lot of great information. And if you did miss it, listen, just get your pen and your paper and get ready for the second half, second segment of our program here with Lori Russell, who is the CEO of Younger Hair Salon and a specialist in non-surgical treatment of alopecia and hair loss, and Terry Peters, who's CEO of Quality Life Pharmacy and Health. I think I got that wrong, Terry. Forgive me. You know I love you. In any case, where we left off, and I'm Linda Dorman. I'm just someone who is loving both of these ladies. So listen, they're in the DMV. Before we get started, let me just make sure you know how to access these amazing women with their expertise. Lori, can you give your contact information? Because I know there are a lot of women out here who are suffering with hair loss and hair thinning, and they need to come and see you and talk to you as an expert.
Absolutely. My email is youngersalon.inc@gmail.com. My number is 571-230-6302.
Okay, great. And we'll make sure that we repeat that towards the end of the program. And Terry, you have, something that we don't really understand as lay folks. We go to the CVS, we go to the Costco pharmacy, we go to this pharmacy and that pharmacy, but you actually are a minority-owned compound pharmacist. So can you tell us how to access you so that for those saliva tests, for all those kinds of hormonal imbalance testings that you do, please tell us how we can also get in touch with you.
Okay. Add one more thing. Veteran-owned, female-owned, minority-owned, specialty compounding pharmacy. So we custom compound medication. So say you have an allergy to a base. We have a lot of people who come to us who have thyroid issues, and there's no commercially available strength in the dose that they need. So I will customize the dose so that it is appropriate for the correction of their thyroid disorder. We do specialize in women's health. So of course we do hormone balancing through saliva testing. We look at your cortisol. So we look at your adrenal function, and we have our own vitamin line as well. So based on those lab results, we could put together a care plan that includes recommendations to your physician for medications as well as medicinal nutrition. We don't call them vitamins. We call them medicinal nutrition because it's all pharmaceutical grade products that tend to have a little higher concentration than if you go to an outside source to buy vitamins. You also get medication reviews and counseling, and we do medication therapy review to make sure that there's no drug interactions when we make our recommendations as well. So it's pretty intense, time consuming, but worth it when you see the outcomes, when you see the person get back in balance and you see the healing. That's our goal. We're all about prevention and education. We can be contacted at 301-324-3715. And our web address is www.qolrx.com.
Wonderful.
So you can look us up on the web and you'll get our address, phone number, and our patients become extensions of our family because we want to ensure that we treat you like we would treat our own grandparents, our parents. We want to make sure that you are well versed in taking care of yourself, and that when you see your physician, you ask the right questions.
And it's so important. And I'm going to just do a global confession for the whole world that's listening in, is that I know about what their services, the quality, high quality services. I'm a new client of Lori. I'm blessed right now. I don't have the hair loss, but I'm working on making sure I don't. And because of that, I've gone to Terry to make sure that I've had my saliva test, because I'm always curious about exactly what's out here for me to understand about my anatomy, my body, my nutrition, and my wellness. And so I can make that my lifestyle. That's why we have the name Health, Wellness, and Lifestyle. And so, yes, I would encourage our listeners and our viewers to get in touch with these ladies. They are the real deal, and they are very successful African-American entrepreneurs. And in Terry's case, a little added something, which is our veteran-owned. Thank you for your service in the Air Force, Terry Peters.
Thank you.
We appreciate you. We appreciate you greatly. So in addition to all the amazing clients and patients that you work with, the information piece and parts of it is really, really critical. Tell us now a little bit about what are the types of autoimmune diseases. I know, Lori, you're very well versed on alopecia and all the various types, the subsets. But there are others that both you and Terry can kind of chat about a little bit, so people will understand exactly what we're talking about when we talk about autoimmune.
Well, I'm gonna chime in, Terry. I'm gonna chime in real quick. So, Terry and I have a lot of we do a lot of collaboration, because I have clients who have come to me and I notice things in their scalp when I go through my whole consultation process and use my magnifying scope. I can see inflammation in the scalp and those kind of things. So I tend to refer them to Terry so they can get their further testing. I've had clients who've had lupus and scalp lupus where they've lost their hair, sarcoidosis where they've lost patches of their hair, and they'll have different patches in their scalp that looks almost like the skin has been burned. So I've seen a lot of different things. A client whose complete crown of her head was completely smooth, completely gone. But she also had lupus. She had a lot of underlying conditions.
It's important to understand, because I think sometimes we live with these mal disease or mal states, and because we can function, we can still talk,
Right.
walk, eat, play, communicate, and we cover them up, but we don't realize there is a name to it. There's a requirement for treatment. It is not normal, and we need to come to the experts such as yourself and Terry as a compounding pharmacist and expert in this area. So you touched on a few. You said lupus.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about alopecia. You've talked about inflammation. Name a few others that we may or may not know about. I've heard about a few others that I think are important to name. Terry?
Yeah, let me just start by saying, when they refer to autoimmune disease, they're saying a disease in which the body's immune system attacks healthy cells. So let's think about that. That's an exaggerated response.
Mm-hmm.
When you have an allergy and it's springtime, and if a person goes outside and doesn't have allergies, they may sneeze, rub their nose and keep going. But the person that has a weakened immune system will have an exaggerated response, and it may trigger asthma. It may trigger a severe response. That has to do with the immune system. And where does if you don't know this by now, your immunity starts in your gut. So let's go back to this. Let me give you some more autoimmune diseases. We have rheumatoid arthritis, which is a chronic inflammatory disorder affecting the joints, including those in the hands and the feet. We have lupus, an inflammatory disease caused when the immune system attacks its own tissues. We have celiac disease, which is an immune reaction to eating gluten, a protein found in wheat, barley, and rye. We have Sjogren's, that's SJOGREN'(S) syndrome, which is an immune system disorder characterized by dry eyes and dry mouth. We have multiple sclerosis, a disease in which the immune system eats away at the protective covering of the nerves. We have polymyalgia rheumatica, an inflammatory disorder causing muscle pain and stiffness around the shoulders and the hips. We have ankylosing spondylitis, which is an inflammatory arthritis affecting the spine and the large joints. We have type 1 diabetes, which I told you about, a chronic condition in which the pancreas produces little or no insulin. And remember, I told you, one of the things they know it could be linked to is this bovine serum antigen from cow's milk given to children. We have alopecia areata, which we talked about, which is the sudden hair loss that starts with one or more circular bald patches that may overlap. And the last two, one is vasculitis, which is an inflammation of the blood vessels that causes changes in the blood vessel walls. Then lastly, temporal arteritis, which is an inflammation of the blood vessels called arteries in and around the scalp. Now, what is the common thread? Inflammation, 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 immune response, the gut. Okay, so how come you can't? Common sense will tell me that there's a food situation going on here.
Hey Terry, can I ask you a question? And then let's keep up. Is psoriasis and something like, because I get little dry patches on my skin every once in a while, and I kind of think, oh my God, I have psoriasis, and maybe not. Maybe it's just I'm not drinking enough water. And how about
it could be contact dermatitis, which you came in contact with something that caused an inflammatory response. It could be something too much sugar. Too much sugar causes your skin to dehydrate. Not enough water. Water is your friend, and a lot of these problems with inflammation have to do with not getting enough fluids, with not getting the waste out of our bodies. You start your day with 2 cups of water with the juice of half of a lemon. Everything from yesterday begins to move out of your body instead of staying in your body and being recirculated as toxins.
Wow. What about Graves' disease? I hear a lot about that. You know, we know some of the
Graves'
famous
disease
celebrities with the big eyes.
Yeah,
and
Graves' disease is the thyroid. When the adrenals are out of whack, the thyroid tries to help, and then it gets out of whack. Again, finding out what is the trigger. Looking at iodine. Iodine feeds the thyroid. Sometimes people get too much iodine. Sometimes people get not enough. Most of our diet these days, we don't have enough iodine. Another thing, breast tissue and thyroid compete for iodine.
Oh.
So all this is food. This is food. This is what are we eating? The food of our ancestors is not the food that we're eating now. It's been genetically modified and your body doesn't recognize it. So it responds with an inflammatory response. Every thread, every word, and every description I gave you said a chronic inflammatory disorder. Now, how will it manifest itself? There's a book that's available that actually lists 200 misdiagnosed diseases associated with gluten allergies.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
So let's just do a recap because you just dumped the mother load on us. Let's just do a recap, okay? And then we're gonna pick right back up and keep on going. So these autoimmune diseases, the common thread is the foods that we're eating, and that's creating a form of inflammation in our bodies that is manifesting itself in any one of these types of diseases. And I'm sure there's genetics, I'm sure there's environmental, I'm sure there is some lifestyle.
Well, let me stop you there. Isn't food coming from our environment? It's grown in a soil that's toxic.
Yes.
The nutrition we got from oranges in the 70s is not the same orange. That's why we need so much supplementation, because our food sources don't supply us. And didn't you all just hear over the holidays? They listed on one, I think it was on CNN, the herbs and spices. They're so full of arsenic.
Yes.
They tell people not to eat it.
We heard about that. And this is an interesting tidbit. And I don't want to get off too far off topic because there's so many offshoots of this conversation that we're going to have, because we're going to have the dynamic dual sisters back, is the fact that even our farming of our foods right now can create harm. If you're harvesting through machines, then you are spilling out the carbon that goes into the soil that then is part of that food source. I did a whole program related to that in another platform, and was just so in awe of just how we farm our foods contributes to the low quality foods that we're eating, the chemicals that are being dispersed from farm machinery versus hand-picked harvesting. So
which is why we need to support our farmers.
Yes.
We need to support especially our organically grown foods. We need to support our farmers, because what they're producing is what's going to make a difference in the lives of our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. We need to support them.
So we talk now about, oh my goodness, I'm just overloaded, So one of the questions that we have that's coming from our Facebook audience is, how do we treat things like rheumatoid arthritis? How do we treat Graves' disease, lupus? How do we treat alopecia? Is it the same types of treatment, or is there preventative? Obviously we want to go into prevention, which is something that you provided us with, but how do we treat that? Lori, how do you treat your clientele, and how do you treat your patients, Terry? Because that's the next step in the educational process, knowing what the treatment is, because we now know what's going on in our body. We've gotten some symptoms.
Let's start with the inside first, and then Lori, you can take over for the outside.
Okay.
First thing I want to do is I want to know your whole body's chemistry. I want to know your kidney function. I want to know your liver function. I want to know your thyroid function. I want to know your how you metabolize your food. I want to know if you are sensitive to foods. I want to get to the root cause of what is manifesting as this diseased state. Okay. Since we're talking about inflammation, there is a supplement called alpha lipoic acid that actually will reduce the inflammation at the level of the cells, and which is why it's promoted in diabetic patients, because one of the problems with type 2 insulin resistant diabetes is that when you eat sugary foods, your cells are so inflamed. There's that word again. Inflammation is associated with diabetes too. Your cells are so inflamed that the insulin that's produced by your pancreas is not stimulating the cells to open their channels to take the sugar in for energy. So you got this buildup and backlog of sugar that builds up in your blood vessels, which creates more inflammation, that vasculitis. That's why diabetics are high risk for kidney failure, for heart failure, for heart attacks, strokes, for clots. One of the biggest things, we talked about this, Linda, before with COVID. COVID goes after your microvascular system. That's why when people get COVID in their besides remdesivir, they go on blood thinners because it's making clots.
And we hear a lot
attacks your
about that.
microvascular system. Exactly. Then it attacks your lungs by creating fibers and stuff in your lungs. So now you have difficulty breathing. And of course, that puts pressure on the heart. The heart enlarges and then it fails. So this is another reason, getting back to COVID, why you need to do what you can to prevent it. Because getting it can lead to long haulers disease, and all these manifestations of these diseases, they're going to increase. If you have underlying rheumatoid arthritis, do things that are going to reduce the inflammation in your joints. I noticed that most people that have arthritis, if they're dehydrated and we have the barometric pressure changes like we're having now with all this cold, they suffer more. Get moving, do yoga, exercise, don't do the hardcore running. You don't have to do hardcore running. Just walk. Just keep the blood flowing. That's the key thing.
So that's why we hear people say, Terry, that, oh, it's getting cold. I can feel it in my bones. Is that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's not a wise tale. That's a real thing.
That's real.
Okay.
That's chemistry. This chemistry. It's your body's chemistry.
Well, Terry, can I ask you a question too?
Yeah.
The results of catching COVID, is that the same? Are there the same results if it's a mild case versus if you are laid up?
We don't know what you're going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years from being exposed to COVID. Right now, you got over COVID, but we don't know if you can have this sudden death syndrome because something happened to your heart and nobody captured it or saw it.
Yeah. So what you're saying is we need to. That's the worst part,
and I get it.
Yeah, that's the scary part of this whole thing, because there's a proponents for the vaccine and that statement and proponents against. But what we do know is that we can control what we eat, and therefore how our bodies are made to at least be in the best condition possible to fight anything that's coming in, common cold, disease, cancers, you name it. But starting with dealing with the inflammation. So,
Linda, I'm sorry.
This was a master class in anatomy and chemistry. I'm telling you, it's a master class. It's a master class.
Linda, one more thing. The biggest cure for colon cancer is folic acid. They give it to you in the form of leucovorin when you get cancer.
Leucovorin.
But guess what food is highest in folic acid, ladies and gentlemen? Dark green leafy vegetables. You want to prevent cancer? Eat more collard greens. Eat more spinach. Eat more broccoli. Broccoli breaks down to a product that has sulforaphane in it. Cancer cells don't like that product. Breast cancer cells don't like broccoli either. There's sulforaphane from broccoli. Eat more of those dark green leafy vegetables. Less meat, more vegetables.
Wow. This is why we all need to know exactly the body we're living in. That's why you said, listen, I can't even talk right now. You're saying that's why the gut health is so important. Thinking about our food as part of our medicinal, nutritional make up,
That's
and to eat
That's
to
right.
live, not to live to eat, and be
Exactly.
so. But also when we cook those foods, we're talking, don't necessarily learn a new style of cooking versus the traditional. My father was from Orangeburg, South Carolina, and if we didn't kill everything and dump all the nutritions out in the water, we didn't smother it, fry it, cook it, flour it up, it wasn't going to be consumed in my household growing up. So we've turned the tide, and you know, as we grew up, you learn to think about your food in a holistic way. And so we don't kill our foods in the cooking process. We enhance it so that we can enjoy it, but also get the nutritional benefits from it as well.
Right. Saute, steam, or raw. And if you do raw, clean it well so you don't get parasites.
Oh, mercy.
And you can do grapefruit seed extract kills anything on a plant. So get those plant in like Wegmans, they have like the plant-based food, raw food cleaners,
Right.
those types of things. That will actually kill anything. So clean your food, but raw, steamed, or sauteed.
Okay, well, my kids are going to love this because I'm going to just feed us all broccoli tonight. That's all we want. All broccoli. I'm telling you right now.
One more thing, don't overdo it on the cruciferous vegetables, because if you have underlying thyroid issues, you can develop a goiter. So it's all about balance. So some nights do spinach, collard greens, and some nights do cabbage, kale. Kale is a superfood. So kale and the collard greens, those dark green leafy vegetables are the highest, but they will help clean and clean your gut. And they're full of folic acid, which is, for pregnant moms, that's how you end up with the healthier babies.
Wow.
And with good bones. And, you know, those are the things you want to incorporate more in your diet.
So
dark green vegetables.
Dark green vegetables. And we're talking about to address this whole issue of autoimmune disease, and to support and to help yourself if you're suffering from an autoimmune disease, work towards reducing inflammation. Can we ever really eliminate inflammation from our body? Is that a possibility? So you don't have the swelling legs, the swelling arms, the feeling of heaviness, and all the other autoimmune disease symptoms and that come up.
You will be surprised that if you make an adjustment in your diet and cut back on the heavy animal proteins, you will be surprised that the flare-ups will start to diminish naturally. There are supplements that people do take, alpha lipoic acid, or ALA, turmeric and things like that. They're great, but they work best if you pair it with healthy eating. Mm-hmm. You don't eat bad foods and give yourself insulin. You just don't do it. That's counterproductive.
Wow.
And it's also dangerous. Long term, it's dangerous, because you see a lot of those people that do that, they lose limbs. They start getting wounds, and it's just horrible. Mm-hmm. So you will be surprised that you'll have less flare-ups of these things when you make the lifestyle change. It's all about lifestyle changes.
Wonderful. And so we talked about, with the lifestyle changes, so let's just say we're already here and we've got to come to Lori. Lori, so we talked about the insides, and we can continue to talk about that. I think we just need a part 2 on what's going on the inside as it relates to autoimmune disease, and how food can serve as medicine to us. So Terry's proposition to you, Lori, was she would take the inside and you would take the outside.
Right. Okay. So for me, what I do, the first thing I want clients to do is come in and have a full, complete consultation, which includes, I have people fill out paperwork for complete family history, complete medical history, because I also want to know what's going on inside. If anyone else has the same challenges going on that you do. So I look at that. The next thing I'll do is I'll use my magnifying scope, and then I'll look at the scalp, because people don't realize you could put all the oils and creams and everything on your scalp, on your hair. But if your scalp is not healthy, and I'm seeing that a lot in people who constantly keep their hair tied up or braided down under weaves for months on end and never getting to the scalp. So you see a lot of sebum buildup, which then turns to it's almost like shellac on the scalp, which starts blocking the hair follicle. And so what I'm looking at with the scope is the sebum buildup. And it'll seal the follicles off. So then I also will create a mold. So if it's someone who is in the position or needs a cranial prosthesis, then I will create a mold and do forehead measurements. And this is not a cranial prosthesis that you can go to the wig shop and buy. That's a wig.
Okay.
I'm talking customized cranial prosthesis for any size area of hair loss that you have. So like the client of mine who had,
plastic mold, like something that would fit on your head?
well, I create a mold for fitting purposes to create the cranial prosthesis.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and it's fully customizable. It's something that, like I said, it's just yours. So if you have that circle patch in the crown of your head missing, I can completely match that area. Hair, I can change, the color, the texture, everything. And then if you're not someone who needs or is at that place of needing a cranial prosthesis, then I also have a hair treatment system, which helps dissolve the sebum off the scalp, but also helps boost the follicle, boost blood flow to feed the follicle and feed the bulb of the hair, which makes hair grow.
Do we know of any natural remedies that do that you would like aloe vera as an example? My kids they're teenage girls and they're into every beauty trick of the book through TikTok and other media, social media. And so they love to put things like egg and mayonnaise and cucumber and aloe vera on their hair. And I'm just thinking, I don't know if that's the smart thing to do, ladies, but it couldn't harm, but I don't want it to do that. Hopefully it'll help. But are there any natural remedies that you encourage in the interim while people are in their own homes waiting to come and see you?
Well, what's interesting is, this goes back to what Terry was talking about, is about the foods. So eggs, mayonnaise, those are all processed.
Uh-oh.
They're processed ingredients. Not only that, but they're high. You're talking about protein. So then you may over proteinize your hair and then create a hard shell on your hair, which will break the hair shaft itself. So you'll see shedding, as people like to call it.
Yes.
Hair breakage from that.
Wow. So Lori, Russell, thank you very much. And Terry Peters, who's in that, secret place that we can't name, or, we'll be in big trouble. But your voice was just amplified across the airways. We have to now transition to our next program. And we thank you both. We're going to look to bring you back. This has been the health, wellness, and lifestyle segment of Reset. We thank you so very much for joining us today. And we wish everyone the best health. This is Linda Dorman. Thank you and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
You're welcome.